We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin and Beis Meseches Shevuos. This is Shevuos Daf 16b. The Mishnah said Nitma ba'azara. Let's say the person became tamei while he was in the azara, v'nel mamimenu tuma, and then there was a lapse of awareness in terms of the tuma. And so then it said in the Mishnah, if the person stays in the azara for a certain amount of time, the amount of time to bow, so then we say again that he is liable to bring a carbon. The Gemara says Tuma ba'azara minolan. From where do we know that if somebody became tamei in the azara, how do we know that the liability applies in that case as well? Rashi explains, Tuma ba'azara minolan, Misha nitma ba'azara. Let's say somebody becomes tamei in the azara, minolan de mechayev. From where do we know that he's chayev a carbon? Halo karina v'lo yitmu es machaneim. That's not called v'lo yitmu es machaneim shekvar timei, because there was already the tuma there in the azara, so he hasn't brought in the tuma from the outside, so to speak. He's becoming tamei in the azara. So how do we know there's liability for that? And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rebbe Lazar says, Kasav Echad Omer, there's one pasuk which says, Es Mishkan Hashem Timei, that the Mishkan, the person made Tamei, the Kasav Echad Omer, Ki Es Mikdash Hashem Timei, and then there's another pasuk that says, Ki Es Mikdash Hashem Timei. Essentially, it's an extra pasuk, and we'll read with the parentheses as well, Emeinu Inyan L'Tuma Shebachutz, Tenei Inyan L'Tuma Shebifnim. If we don't need the extra pasuk for somebody who became Tamei outside and entered, you can apply it to a case where somebody became Tamei inside. Rashi says Shabachutz, meaning again, Shenitma mibachutz, he became tamei on the outside. Essentially, it's an extra pasuk. The Gemara says Ukroi miyasri, but are these psukim? Is this pasuk really extra? Ha-mitzrach tzriche. Actually, the pasuk is needed. It's needed to say both es Mishkan Hashem Timei and also to say Ki es Mikdash Hashem Timei. Both psukim are actually needed. Titania, as we learned in the following, Braiser, Rebbe Lazar says, Im nemar Mishkan, lamar nemar Mikdash. If it calls it a Mishkan, if it says Mishkan, why does it say Mikdash? Vim nemar Mikdash, and if it says Mikdash, lamar nemar Mishkan, why does it say Mishkan? Ilu nemar Mishkan v'lo nemar Mikdash. If it said Mishkan and not Mikdash, hayisi yomer, so then I would have said Al Mishkan yehei chayev, that he's chayev on the Mishkan, sharei mashuach b'shemen ha-mishkan, because there it was anointed with the anointing oil. V'al mikdash lo yehei chayev, and I would have thought on the mikdash that one is not chayev. V'im nemar mikdash v'lo nemar mishkan, and if it said mikdash and it didn't say mishkan, hayisi omer al mikdash yehei chayev, I would say that the person is chayev on the mikdash. Sharei kedusha, so kedushas olam, because that has an eternal kedusha. V'al mishkan lo yehei chayev, and I would think that on the mishkan there is no liability. L'kach nemar mishkan, l'kach nemar mikdash. That's why it says mishkan. That's why it says mishkan, and that's why it says mikdash. And so therefore you see this pasuk is not extra. So what exactly, how are we learning this out from the pasuk of Es Mishkan Hashem Timei and Es Mikdash Hashem Timei? And the Gemara continues and explains as follows, Rebbe Lazar, Hachi Kakashale. Rebbe Lazar was bothered as follows. In other words, Rebbe Lazar, who says that it was an extra pasuk that we can learn out from, this was his understanding. Michdi, let us see. Mishkan Ikri Mikdash, Umikdash Ikri Mishkan. In reality, the Mishkan can be called a Mikdash, and a Mikdash can be called a Mishkan. Those words are interchangeable. That's actually what Rebbe Lazar was focusing on. So Nichtav, O Idi V'Idi Mikdash, O Idi V'Idi Mishkan. So just write either both times write the word Mikdash, or both times write the word Mishkan. You'll still have that extra pasuk, but you can use the same term. Mishkan Mikdash lamali. Why does it switch terms and say Mishkan and then say Mikdash? So Shma Min Atarti. So you actually see both of these ideas. You see the idea again that even when the Tuma happens within the Mikdash or Mishkan, that's sufficient for liability. And you also see what the Brisa said. Again, that the Brisa said that one might have thought it's only the Mikdash, one might have thought it's only the Mishkan. So really it applies to both. That's how we learn out both of them. And the Gemara continues, Bishlama Mikdash Ikri Mishkan. Now I understand that the Mikdash can be referred to as Mishkan. Tichsiv, like it's written, V'nasati Mishkani B'sochem, I'm going to place my Mishkan, and that was talking about the Mikdash, and it's referred to as Mishkan. Ela Mishkan Dekri Mikdash Minolan. Where do we find that the Mishkan is called Mikdash? Ilema Midichsiv, if you're going to say it's from what's written in the following pasuk, V'nasu HaKahasim Nosei HaMikdash. It says that the tribe of Kahas, that they carried the Mikdash, so that's Hahu Ba'aron Ksiv. That's actually talking about the Aron. That's not talking about the Mishkan. So Elamei Hacha, the Gemara says rather it's from here, from the following pasuk, Ve'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'sochem. It says that make for me a mikdash and I will dwell among them. And there the word mikdash is clearly referring to the Mishkan, as the pasuk goes on to say, Uchsiv, as it's written in the pasuk. It says, Kechol asher ani mareh oscha es tavnis hamishkan. It says, like everything I show you, the tavnis hamishkan, that's what it says right after that. And so therefore you see that the word mikdash is being used. And again, you see the word mikdash is being used for Mishkan. And Rashi explains, Kedushas Olam, the Beis HaMikdash has a Kedushas Olam. What does that mean? She'ein achareh heter bamos. That simply means that once there's a Beis HaMikdash, you can no longer bring on the bama. You can no longer bring on altars that are outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Eshkechon Mikdash Dikri Mishkan can mefarsh l'kaman. The Gemara will explain where we find that Mikdash and Mishkan can be used interchangeably. V'nasati Mishkani b'sochachem. It says, I'm going to place my Mishkan. Kol haniton b'sochem kari Mishkan. Anything that is placed within you, that is called a Mishkan. So you see that the Mikdash can be referred to as Mishkan. And then it said that the Kahasim they carry, and it used the word Mikdash, but actually Ahu ba'aron ksiv. That's actually referring to the Aron. It's not referring to the Mikdash. It's not referring to the Mishkan. Shayu HaKahasim nosim es ha'aron v'ashulchan v'amenorah v'amizbachos. The Kahasim, they would carry the Aron, Shulchan, Menorah, and the Mizbachos. Shem devarim ha-mikudashim. Those were things that were mikudashim. That's why it uses the word Mikdash over there. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'hishtachave o sheshaha kidei hishtachavo." Let's say the person again became tamei in the Azara, and then either the person bowed or he stayed there the amount of time that it takes to bow. So then the person would be liable. And the Gemara says, "Amar Rava says, Lo shanu ela shehishtachave klape panim." When we talk about bowing, we're talking about when you bow towards the inside, meaning you bow towards the kodesh kadashim. Aval hishtachave klape chutz. But if he bows in the other direction towards the outside, so then shah in lo shah lo. So then he actually has to stay there the amount of time it takes to bow. If he doesn't stay there that long, then the person is not going to be liable. In other words, what Rava is effectively saying is that if the person bows, he doesn't actually have to be there the amount of time it takes to bow. But if he doesn't bow, then he has to be there the amount of time it takes to bow. And that distinction applies as well when you're bowing towards the inside as opposed to the outside. Bowing towards the Kodesh Kadashim, that's bowing, so you don't need shaha, you don't need to stay there the amount of time it takes to bow. But if he bows towards the outside, then again, shah in lo shah lo, then it's not going to apply if he doesn't stay there that amount of time. And the Gemara continues, Ika damasni lo asefer. There are some that have the same basic teaching, but going on the end of the Mishnah. It said, O shesha b'chtei hishtachava. It said, or if he stayed there the amount of time to bow. Mechlal, that implies the hishtachava gufa boi shehiyah. That sounds like that when the person bows, he also needs to stay there for that amount of time. And on that, Amar Rava says, Lo shanu ela shehishtachava klape chutz. That's only true if he bows towards the outside. Aval klape panim, but if he bows towards the inside, the Kodesh Kadashim, afagav de losha, then even if he doesn't stay there that amount of time, v'hachi kamar, and this is what it means to say, hishtachave klape panim, if he bows towards the inside, o shesha kidei hishtachavo, b'hach hishtachavo de klape chutz, or if he stays there the amount of time it takes to bow when bowing towards the outside, so chayiv, so then he's going to be liable. And the Gemara continues, hechi dami hishtachavo de ispa shehiyah, v'hechi dami hishtachavo de lespa shehiyah. What exactly is a case of bowing where the person stays long enough, and what's a case of bowing where he doesn't stay? One would think that if a person bows, so automatically by definition, he's there the amount of time that it takes to bow. And so the Gemara clarifies and explains as follows, the les ba shehiyah, what would be a situation of bowing where he's not there the amount of time it takes to bow? Zu kriya bi'alma, that would be kriya bi'alma, that would be essentially just kneeling. Zu kriya bi'almahi, Zukriya bi'almihi, that would be just kneeling. That is not the amount of time it takes to do a full bow. The isba shehiyah, but what's the situation where the person is there long enough to bow? That is pishot yadayim v'raglayim. That's when the person does a full bowing, spreading out his hands and his feet. The kama shir shir. Now, how long is this? How long is the amount of time it takes to do a full pishot yadayim v'raglayim bow? Pligi bar Rav Yitzchak bar Nachmani v'chad de'imei. There's a machlokas there between Rav Yitzchak bar Nachmani and the one with him. Who's the one with him? And one who is there, Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, that's Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. V'yamri la, some have the version of Shimon ben Pazi, v'chad de'imei, that is Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi and the one who's with him. Umanu Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani, and who is that is Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. V'yamri la Rabbi Shimon bar Nachmani, and some say it refers to Rabbi Shimon bar Nachmani. In any case, the machlokas is as follows. Chad Omar Kememre Dahai Psukkah. One says it's like saying the following pasuk that we're going to quote in a moment. You have to say the whole pasuk. The amount of time it takes to say that pasuk is the amount of time of bowing with pishut yadayim v'raglayim. V'chad Amar Kemi v'yichru l'seifa. Some say, or the other one says, it's just from the amount of time of the word vayichru in the pasuk till the end of the pasuk. And here's the full pasuk. It's a pasuk in Divrei Hayomim. V'chol b'nei Yisrael roim beredes ha'ishu chvod Hashem al abayis vayichru. That's the word vayichru. V'yichru apayim arza al haritzva vayishtachavu v'hodos l'Hashem kitov kili olam chasto. So again, it's a question whether it's the entire pasuk or just from vayichru until the end of the pasuk. And Rashi explains, Lo shanu dev'hishtachavoya koldehu. We only learn that if the person bows just any amount of bowing, afilu lo shah ba kedei hishtachavoya, even if he didn't stay there the amount of time it takes to do a full bow, chayev, that he's liable, elash hishtachave klape pnim, only if he bows towards the inside, meaning letzad ma'ariv, towards the west, it means towards the Kodesh Kadoshim. Aval hishtachave klape chutz, but if he bows towards the outside, meaning lemizrach, to the east, ein zu hishtachavoya, that's not called bowing, v'ishah kedei and therefore only if he stays while he's tameh, the amount of time it takes to bow is he chayev, mishum shia, because he stayed there for that amount of time, v'ilo lo, and if not, then he is not going to be chayev. And Rashi continues, V'hachi kamar means to say as follows, Hishtachave klape pnim koldehu. Again, if he bows towards the inside any amount, O shalo hishtachave, or let's say he didn't bow, V'shah kedei shir chiyav hishtachave, but he stayed there the amount of time in terms of a liability of bowing. The hanoch klape chutz, which would be again talking about towards the outside, deboy shir, there you need to stay there for that amount of time. So deboy shir chiyav, there you need to stay there the amount of time that would generate that liability. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Kida, when we say the word Kida ala payim, that means bowing on one's face. V'chein hu omer, and that's what it says in the Pasuk, Vatikod Basheva apayim oretz. It says what Basheva did this kind of bowing. Kriya, when we use the word Kriya al birkayim, that means on the knees. That means kneeling. V'chein hu omer, and likewise it says Mikroa al birkav, it mentions the word birkav, it mentions the knees when talking about Kriya. And finally, Hishtachava, when we use the word Hishtachava, Zu pishat yadayim v'raglayim, that is spreading the hands and the feet, a full bow. V'chein hu omer, and likewise it says Havo navo ani v'imcha v'yachecha lehishtachavos lecha arza. It uses the word arza. That sounds like the person is totally spread out on the ground, as Rashi says, arza mashma loshen shituach. The word arza sounds like, again, that the person is totally spread out, pishat yadayim v'raglayim. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Boy, Rava asks the following question: Tzarich shehiyah l'malkus, o ein tzarich shehiyah l'malkus? Does one need to stay that amount of time to bow in terms of getting the punishment of malkus, or do you not need that for malkus? Again, the halacha above, that the person becomes tamei in the azara, needs to stay there for that amount of time, is specifically talking about b'shogeg, that it happened by mistake, and the person is bringing a carbon. The question here is, does that apply to malkus as well? And the Gemara explains the question: l'karban gemiri shehiyah. Is it only by carbon that we have a tradition that you need this shehiyah, this staying there for that amount of time? And lamalkus lo gemiri shehiyah, when it comes to malkus, the person does not need to stay there for that amount of time. Rashi explains lamalkus means to say im hisru bo. Let's say they warned him shelo lamod, not to stay there now that he became tamei. V'yamad, and he stayed there pachos michtei shia, but he stayed there less than the amount of time again that it takes to bow. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph.